for everyone, the Bible verse is in your packet there if you want to pull it out, because I want to ask some people to participate, and I'm going to need other volunteers for other things as well. So, I'm really excited to be talking about casting your net to attract your best customers. It gives me joy. This is one of the Bible stories that I remember as a child, like always wanting to open my children's Bible to this story because I like the picture and I like the whole, how it all happened. And also the hungry fish tool that we're going to talk about afterward is one of my favorite tools at Crosstalks, and I think probably one of the tools that has helped me the most to grow my business. So I want to thank Pastor Robert also, because last year he spent a lot of time with me on this talk, and so this year I'm doing Cast Your Net 2.0. So I like visualizations, and I hope that everybody will indulge me just for a minute by closing your eyes. So just imagine this for a moment. You're hot. You're really tired. You're frustrated, and you're a little bit scared. You've worked all night, but you have nothing to show for it. You're worried about how you're going to provide for your family if you can't make ends meet with what you're trained to do. Just take a moment and let that sink in. Can anybody relate? You can let your eyes open. So with that kind of in mind, hold on to that thought. In in Luke 5, 1 through 11, Peter was sitting on the water's edge, really hot and tired from fishing all night. And what had he caught? Nothing. We can imagine how frustrated he was. He was a professional fisherman, and after a long night, he had nothing to show for it. I would venture to say, as entrepreneurs, many of us have been in Peter's same shoes. Like Peter, there's no doubt you probably worked really hard, and you have the skill, but you have nothing to show for it, and you're not able to get your business to the next level. If you can relate to that experience, then let's take it a bit further. Imagine how you would feel if someone kind of showed up at your office and said, trust me and do what I say, and everything will change. What would you do? Would you be open to listen? So there's a theory, and it's developed by a social scientist. It's a secular theory, Carol Dweck, about the difference between what's called a fixed mindset and a growth mindset. A person who has a fixed mindset believes that there's kind of a cap on how high you can succeed. So this is the way it is. It also suggests that there's limits. With a fixed mindset, there's one way to do it, and that's it. And if you don't do it that way, then it's not done. The past is an indicator of the future. A growth mindset is different. It suggests that there's abundance. There's what we can do today is not limited by what we did yesterday. It suggests that there's more than one possibility for things. If you have a growth mindset, you are happy to go out and ask other people how they can help you. So that's a secular theory, but I would also venture to say someone with a fixed mindset probably believes that they are in ultimate control, and someone who has a growth mindset believes in God and that he is in control. So we're going to start with the Bible verse. Let's see. If someone could read verse 1 through 3, any volunteers? Go ahead.
So it was, as the multitude pressed about him to hear the word of God, that he stood by the lake of Gennesaret and saw two boats standing by the lake. But the fishermen had gone from them and were washing their nets. Then he got into one of the boats, which was Simon's, and asked him to put out a little from the land. And he sat down and taught the multitudes from the boat.
Thank you, Jim. So in that passage, you can see that Peter was pretty frustrated. And so let's see if he was open to grow. Jim, could you actually read 1 through 4 as well? Or not 1 through 4, just 4, sorry.
Sure. When he had stopped speaking, he said to Simon, "Launch out into the deep and let down your nets for a catch."
Thank you. So Jesus was a carpenter, and he gives Peter a command. Put out into what kind of water? Deep. And that's significant because as a professional fisherman, Peter knew that fish are not out during the day. He had fished all night and there were no fish. To him, it was futile. So would someone be willing to volunteer and come up and help me? Sharon, come on up. So I have my handy dandy net here. And Ed had asked me what I was going to do if the meeting got out of control today, and I said, well, I actually have a net here today. So
What am I doing?
So just grab hold of the net. Okay, so if we don't go deep, we're going to go knee deep. And we have to pull the net out. And so think about, what do you catch down here? Thank you. Just demonstrating that. So if you do that, you're just skimming the surface. That's where all the small fish are. And back then, maybe the Sea of Galilee was very clean and there was clean little fish and minnows down there. Today, there's probably like trash. I would imagine if you go into the Atlantic Ocean, there's trash, there's sea foam, there's seaweed, there's a bunch of junk. There's also little fish. And it's also very safe. If you just go knee deep, you're not going to drown. But there's also not much reward. Even if you're down at the Atlantic, there's no waves there. So for Peter, there were no fish. And for each of us as entrepreneurs, the clients might be safe, they might be easy to get, but they're not going to help us grow. Sorry, I'm having trouble with my pages. So many of you remember Speaker of the House, Newt Gingrich, and he had a story, and I had never heard this before. Pastor Robert told me about it, but it's about an antelope and a mouse hunt. So here's how it goes. The lion goes out to hunt, and he is fully capable of catching and killing a field mouse. It's pretty easy for him to do. But it turns out that the energy required to do so exceeds what the mouse was. So it's sort of, he cannot survive doing that. He could spend the whole day hunting and catching mice, but he still would be, there'll be a deficit. A lion needs an antelope, and an antelope is going to take more speed, it's going to take more strength, but at the end of the day, if he goes and catches that, then he can feed his family for a long time. So if we're catching these little fish that aren't doing much to keep us afloat, we're all going to starve. But if we put the same kind of skill and strength into going out and getting the client that we need, then our businesses will thrive. So it gives you, sometimes when you catch those little fish or the mouse, you feel really good. Oh, I got a client, or I got a patient. But it takes a lot of energy probably to keep that person, and it could be energy better spent on someone who is better for you. Would someone read 5:5? Okay, good.
But Simon answered and said to him, Master, we have toiled all night and caught nothing. Nevertheless, at your word, I will let down the net.
Great, thank you. So Sharon, since you're still here, take our net. So we take the net, and now we're going to go into the deep waters. So let's walk together. To see how much closer we are, we're not catching everything, we're catching what's in the deep. We come back together. Thank you. So even though Peter was most likely frustrated and probably thought it was a futile effort, he listened to Jesus and obeyed. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more in a couple minutes, about the obeying. And Connie, would you read 5:6?
But Simon answered and said to him, Master, we have toiled all night and have caught nothing. Nonetheless, at your word, I will let down the net.
Okay, great, thank you. So what happens when Peter lets down the net? How many fish did they catch? A great number, a large number. They caught a great number of fish, so many that their nets began to break. This is why we have to be prepared to scale. We've been talking a lot about scaling in crosstalks. That's what all the crosstalk tools are prepared to help you do. Strengthen your net for this time. If you think about it, a solo entrepreneur's capacity is compared to one net. So this is kind of all you can do. It can only be filled so much before it breaks, because you only have limited time and resources. If you fill the net with small fish that should be thrown back, you're going to drain your resources with no reward. You can't scale in the wide, shallow water, catching all the crap basically that comes up. And believe me, I've had those clients that I caught in the low and drains a lot of resources. But if you go deep, you're not going to go as wide. That's why we have to identify exactly who we want to attract. And that's the whole purpose of our Hungry Fish exercises. Who do we want? Who are the best for us, instead of having this wide scale, anybody is our client. So they're the antelopes, not the mice. They're the people who value your service. They're going to pay you accordingly, and they're also going to go out and tell other people about you that your service is what is worth for. They also energize you, and they don't drain your energy and resources. They are paired up with what you offer, and what you have meets their needs. If your lion energy is big, then you need to attract something that will fill your need, like the antelope. Soraya has said from the first time I met her, if you try to be something to everyone, you can't be anything to anyone. We can't serve everyone. We need to hone it, and we need to find that fish. So who hasn't read and will be willing to read 5:7? Go ahead, Tanya. No, 5:7.
So they signaled to their partners in the other boat to come and help them. And they came and filled both the boats so that they began to sink.
Thank you. So what happens? Who does he call? What happens to the boats? With the abundance and overflow nature of God, we need to be prepared to scale. You might remember Pastor Robert's talk, and I don't know if you did it this year, but there's no elevation without delegation. Peter couldn't bring all these fish in himself. He would have just drowned. At the very least, the net would have broken, and he would have, many more fish would have gotten away. So who can help you? This is when we need to think about who we want to hire. It also is who do we want to partner with that can help us as well. You need your net to work through networking. I know Ed's getting ready to write a book about networking. In order to have more than one net and one boat, you have to scale. 5:8, Soraya, you want to read that?
When Simon Peter saw it, he fell down at Jesus' knees, saying, "Depart from me, for I am a sinful man, O Lord."
Thank you, Soraya. So Peter's saying, I should have believed you. This is where we have to turn to our faith. If we're stuck in that fixed mindset and believe it's up to us to figure out what's going on, there's not going to be any abundance. We have to have faith. And I was thinking about this recently. Am I asking God who I was meant to serve? And maybe, but I don't know that I always listen and obeying, where he's pushing my direction. One of the other resources Pastor Robert had mentioned to me was that Jim Collins' Good to Great, and how he breaks leadership into 5 categories. And they're all leaders, but, the 5th category is a servant leader who builds enduring greatness through a paradoxical combination of personal humility and professional will. So they're humble leaders, and they're driven to help other people. To get to the level 5, you have to be ready to do what Peter did. You have to be humble, and that's when, like him, you will experience the abundance. And who would like, Pastor Robert, do you want to read 5-9? Or 9-11, sorry.
Yep. For he and all who were with him were astonished at the catch of fish which they had taken, and so also were James and John, the sons of Zebedee, who were partners with Simon. And Jesus said to Simon, "Do not be afraid. From now on you will catch men." So when they had brought their boats to the land, they forsook all and followed him.
Thank you. So now you'll become the fisher of men. What do we do when we get there? Just as Peter went off with his bigger purpose to touch souls, we need to rise to our bigger purpose. Who will we touch not only through our business, but more importantly through following God? How will we bring those people to share our purpose? In January, you might remember, we talked about our purpose, our why, why we do what we do, and how we serve God doing that. As you move to become the fishermen, how can you communicate that to those who you bring with you? As you scale, your why needs to be very clear. Now we need to talk about who we serve. Just as Peter found his hungry fish in the deep, we need to identify who and where our hungry fish are. We need to cast our net deep, and we have to have the courage to go after those fish and throw back the ones we don't serve. Someone else can serve them. It takes courage to go deep, and so let's end with another visualization. You can close your eyes if you like. So imagine yourself now sitting in your office at the end of the day. You feel relaxed, yet you feel energized. You remember that just a year ago you felt stressed from trying to find the right clients. You remember how you identified them, you were able to attract them, and you were amazed how quickly your net started to overflow. You brought in employees and partners and are now enjoying the abundance. You send praise and gratitude to God for helping you see who you were meant to serve. You see how practicing humility and faith allowed this abundance to flow. You are living your purpose. So thank you all for participating in this, and we are now going to take our message and put it into action. Sharon. Thank you all.